So we'd been on tour with Godsmack in Europe, and we had a festival in Tokyo, Japan, and we embarked on one of those crazy logistical nightmares that really only a touring band or like a drug smuggler would ever do. You go on these insane flights through these insane connecting cities because we had this awesome tour with Godsmack in Europe that we really wanted to be on, and we had this awesome opportunity to play Download in Japan. It was the first time that Download Festival had been in Japan, and we'd been invited, and there was no way we were going to turn that down. So we decided that in typical Like a Storm fashion, we weren't going to choose between them, we were going to do both. And it meant that we flew from Scandinavia, we flew from Sweden to Japan. And I think before that we may have even been in Germany. So I think we were probably touring in Germany with Godsmack. Then we flew to Sweden, and then we flew to Japan, as you do, right? Every New Zealand band flies from Germany to Sweden to Tokyo and back again. And what was even crazier than that is we were only going to Japan for like less than 24 hours because we'd worked it out so that we only missed one show on that Godsmack Europe tour. Anyone who knows us knows that we're kind of a little bit crazy when it comes to trying to do things, trying to make the most of opportunities, trying to play as many shows as we can, and certainly at that point in our career we were just touring all the time. And we knew that playing the first Download Festival in Tokyo that was not an opportunity that we were going to miss. So we flew from Germany to Sweden, and then Sweden to Tokyo. Needless to say, when we got to the venue in Tokyo, we felt pretty weird, very jet lagged, and the first thing that I did at the venue was go and find a cup of coffee. So backstage at really any big venue, they have all the dressing rooms, there's catering, usually down one end, and then often there are like these coffee stations. So they're kind of like these little tables where people congregate. And for all the stereotypes about, sex, drugs, and rock and roll when it comes to musicians, the thing that they really fucking love is coffee. If you think they love the other stuff, you should see people gravitate to these coffee stations. So I was standing there at this coffee station. There was no one else around, and to be perfectly honest, I was feeling like pretty out of it. We had played a show in Germany, flown to Stockholm, then flown to Tokyo, and then basically come to the venue, because Japanese festivals are unbelievably efficient, and you load in at something like 6 o'clock in the morning, I think. So we had been at the venue since early morning. That's not rock and roll time. That's the opposite of the timetable that you're normally on when you're on tour. What was funny is I kind of figured out that when we were playing, which was sometime around midday, was ultimately about 10 p.m. in Europe. So I was like, okay, as long as I don't look at the clock too much, my body clock will think that it is time to play a show, because it thinks it's still in Europe. But of course, everything else about your day is built around the Japanese timetable because you're in Japan. So that's where the coffee comes in. So I was standing at this coffee station, and a guy walks up to me, and he just starts talking to me because I'm currently using the machine, and he can either stand there in silence or we can sort of make polite chit chat. And he said to me, I think I saw you guys were on my flight. Are you guys from Sweden? And I was like, we're actually from New Zealand, but we've been on tour in Europe and we wanted to get to Tokyo, so for some reason the thing that made the most sense was to go through Stockholm. And he's like, oh, you guys are from New Zealand, that's cool. Yeah, I love New Zealand. And we just like having this conversation. And I said, oh, are you here, who are you here with? Because I figured, if you're backstage at a Japanese festival, then you are with some band. You're either like in the band or you're in the crew, but you're not just going to be like a random dude. So he's going to be somebody. And I was like, oh, what band are you here with? And he's like, oh, I'm here with Ghost. And I fucking love Ghost. And what was funny is on that particular tour of Europe with Godsmack, I've been listening to Ghost shitloads. I kind of get in these loops where if I get really into a band or really into one of their albums, then I've just listened to it like all the time. So I was listening to Ghost all the time. And we'd actually played with Ghost quite a lot, but always at festivals. And the thing about Ghost, for anyone who doesn't know, is that they all wear masks and costumes. And so I actually had no idea what anyone in the band looked like. What I did know is that most of the guys, or most of the people in Ghost when they play live, are session players. And they've even made it like a thing about the band. Like they're called the Nameless Ghouls. And it's kind of a cool idea because it means that the session players can trade out. They can switch out on different tours or change over the years. And the look of the band is still basically the same. So you have this like central figure, and then you have the rest of the band who are the Nameless Ghouls. And the guy that I'm talking to is this really kind of friendly, clean-cut looking Swedish guy. And so I just figured, okay, well, he's got to be one of the Nameless Ghouls because we have met a lot of session players over the years. And one of the things that almost defines world-class session musicians is that they're very mellow people to be around. That's part of the thing. It's like if you were looking to populate a band with session musicians, you're not looking for a ton of big personalities. You're looking for really good musicians who are very easy to be around. And this dude had that vibe. So I was like, well, shit, he's got to be one of the Nameless Ghouls. So then we're like sitting there talking. We had just played in Sweden with Godsmack. We played a couple of shows. So we're like talking about, the ins and outs of the venues and what was it like and what was the weather like and just like, we're just standing there talking like, well, I made my coffee, then we're talking while he makes his coffee, and then we're just doing that kind of stand around that you do. Certainly anyone who has been on tour knows this, where you just sort of lean against the wall with a cup of coffee. So like you're not really holding yourself up anymore. You're just sort of leaning against the wall and you've got your coffee and you just like chat. And we must have chatted for like, 15 or 20 minutes. And then I had to go and he had to go because, as important as coffee is, that's not ultimately why you're at the festival. You do have interviews and warm-ups. And eventually you even go on stage and play a show, even though you feel like you haven't slept since you left Germany. So I did catch his name at the end. I was like, oh, I'm Matt, by the way. And he's like, oh, it's nice to meet you, Matt. I'm Tobias. And I was like, oh, it's great to meet you, man. And I'm walking back to our dressing room now, and I'm thinking, fuck, that's cool, man. I just met one of the guys who plays for Ghost. And I've been listening to Ghost so much, I was like, oh shit, I wonder which guy that is. Because we had played with them probably 3 or 4 times in the last 12 months, but always at festivals. So you're always like kind of watching them play from like side stage, or you're watching from like some little VIP area, but you're not actually like seeing them like you can't see behind their masks, so you don't know what any of them look like. And when I got back into our dressing room, I told Kent and Chris and Zach, I was like, oh, I just met one of the guys from Ghost. He was a really nice guy. You know, I think he's probably one of the nameless ghouls. But yeah, he's a really sweet dude. And then I thought, I'm just gonna type that guy's name into Google, because I want to see, like, maybe someone's figured out, like, oh, this is the guitarist for Ghost, or this is the drummer for Ghost. And I type in his name and it pulls up his profile, and he's the fucking singer. And not only is he the singer, he's like the visionary. Like, Ghost is his brainchild. He plays pretty much all the instruments on their records. He writes all the songs. The whole thing is his idea. And at that point in their career, only like their ultra fans knew what any of them looked like. So I had no idea what he looked like. And this dude, I knew about him, but I didn't know what his name was. I knew that there was like a guy who wrote all the music, and he was also the singer, and that he was also a guitarist. Like, so I knew quite a lot about him, but I didn't know his name. And it was the fucking funniest feeling to come back and pull up his picture and be like, shit, that's the guy that I was talking to. And I had spoken to quite a lot of our fans on the American tour that we did right before going to Europe. We have quite a lot of fans who are also Ghost fans. And so, you know, I heard a lot about this guy, and he's like this fucking mysterious figure. You know, he's almost like the Wizard of Oz. He's like back there creating this genius music and putting together this whole show, and then he comes out totally dressed up in these crazy costumes, and it's this whole thing. But I never knew what his name was. And so the funniest thing is, like, then I'm just standing in our dressing room and I'm like, shit, that was that guy. Like, I've seen that dude play a bunch of times in the last year. I've heard our fans talk about this guy for at least the last year. And I had no idea who he was, and I was just standing there talking to him over a cup of coffee in Japan. So that's one of those cool things that happens on tour. And obviously when you get a band like Ghost, Slipknot is the same. If you don't know, like, you can see the band a lot. You can even be playing the same festivals that they are and be traveling around and basically seeing them like every weekend. But you don't actually know what they look like, because they're always like made up. So that was like a really funny thing. I've had a lot of awesome conversations with people over the years, bands that we've toured with or bands that we've gone along to as VIPs ourselves. But that's the first time I've ever had like an awesome conversation with someone, having no idea who they were. Then I've gone back and realized that it's the person who makes the music that I've been thrashing for like the last month while I'm on tour. You know, every night I would get into my bunk on the bus and listen to Ghost. I never even got to tell him that, because I didn't know that that's who he was. So maybe next time I see him, next time we go to Japan, maybe he'll also be at the coffee machine. And maybe then I'll get the chance to tell him. But I thought that was like a very cool moment on tour. And it was especially cool in a lot of ways because I got to really connect with him on a level that had nothing to do with the band or me being a fan of their music or anything, because I had no idea who he was. I think I was a lot more sort of free-flowing in terms of the chat that he and I had. It could have also been the sleep deprivation, but I think I was a lot more free-flowing given that I didn't know who I was talking to. So that's the story of how I met Tobias from Ghost.